What's going on, everybody? It's Will from Hermens Outdoors. In today's video, I'm making baby back ribs with my wife's super secret barbecue sauce. Now, in Oregon, we don't have a particular barbecue style, but we've added a little extra into the sauce to make it our own. And this recipe was the first one I ever did on my Traeger 6 years ago, so check it out.
For the first step in the 3-2-1 process, remove the membrane backing off the backside of the ribs. You don't want to leave this on and you don't want to eat it because there's no taste or flavor to it, and it doesn't allow any of the spice rub to penetrate the backside of the ribs when you put them on the smoker. So grab it from the corner and then pull and just remove from the back completely like I did here. So then the next step of the process is you'll trim up the ribs. So any excess pockets of fat, any loose pieces of meat on the side, you're going to want to trim those up because when you put them in the smoker, the first thing that'll happen is those small pieces will dry out super easily, and you don't want that. So it's actually better to just remove them off the sides and the ribs, and especially when you turn the ribs over, you want to get that big pockets of fat off the ribs because one, the smoke doesn't penetrate fat, and two, the seasoning's on there as well, and the seasoning doesn't penetrate as well. So you want to remove any of those deeper pockets of fat. Now you still want fat on the ribs because fat is flavor, but you don't want those big pockets just hanging out on the ribs the whole time. Now the next step is to wipe down the ribs and wipe the moisture off with a paper towel really quickly. Just both sides, just get as much moisture off as you can. And then for the base, you're going to have 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce, 1/3 cup of yellow mustard, and this is going to help thicken this up when you slather the ribs with this mixture. Then apple juice. I like to use Martinelli's apple juice. This is in a little container that you can get from the store, and I'll pour about 1/4 or 1/3 of this into the mustard and Worcestershire mixture, and then start mixing it up together. And then this is what we'll base the ribs in when we put them on the smoker today. So mixing that up, again, this recipe is for 2 racks of ribs. You can cut it down if you're only doing 1 rack of ribs for your cook. And next, we're gonna brush the ribs with the mustard base. So coat both sides nice and good. There should be enough mixture to cover 2 racks of ribs. Again, get both sides nice and good. Get all those little pockets and areas, especially the sides and the corners. You want to make sure you get every piece of meat with the mixture. And then we're going to add our seasoning. So I've got Johnny's pork seasoning, which is a local spice rub company here in Portland. So you're going to just rub the ribs both sides. I always like to go for a little bit more spice rub than maybe some people do, but you want to coat those ribs nice and good before putting them into the smoker. Get both sides nice and good. Next step is the 3-2-1. We're gonna put the ribs right on the grill grate. I'm using my Traeger today, and we've got it on smoke setting, about 150 to 165 degrees for these ribs. Again, they're gonna cook for about 3 hours on smoke setting. Again, that's just to start to get them slowly up to temperature, get that base of the mustard nice and solidified on those ribs. And we're gonna leave that and let that go for about 3 hours. Next step of the process is we're going to wrap the ribs. So I've got some foil and I got it double wrapped, and then we're crimping the edges so that the moisture doesn't leak out of it when we add in the apple juice here. So get a double sheet of the thick tin foil. Next step is brought the ribs back inside the foil from the grill. And next, we're going to add in our mixture. So in the second step of the process, we're going to put honey over the top of the ribs. Now, how much honey? I like to coat the entire top of the ribs with the honey. And that way, when the next step, when we add in the brown sugar, you get full coverage on the ribs and it'll stick a little bit easier. So honey first, then brown sugar over the top. Again, I like to pat it down just a little bit. And then apple juice. So add in the rest of your Martinelli's, whatever you've got left, about put half in one and half in the other, and that'll add moisture in to the ribs and keep them nice and moist in the cooking process. And then we're going to wrap the ribs up, crimp the top and then both of the edges so that none of the steam escapes. And then we're going to put them back on the grill. I got the smoker up to 225 for the second part, 2 hours for this part of the process. Again, right on the grill grate, and be careful when you put them in that you don't drag them across the grate. That's how you get holes in the foil and the moisture leaks out. So while the ribs are smoking, we're gonna make our barbecue sauce. So this is my wife's special barbecue recipe. It's blackberry guajillo sauce. And the blackberries are actually from my parents' house that we pick every summer. So we pick about 5 gallons worth and freeze them and have them to make barbecue sauce during the summer. Oregon doesn't really have a barbecue sauce style or a style of barbecue, unlike St. Louis, Memphis, Carolina, Texas, Kansas City. We add the blackberry in because it adds a little bit of a fruity flavor, of course, but it also complements the heat well with the peppers. So it's kind of our version of Oregon barbecue style that we like to put on our ribs. So the next step of the process is bring the ribs out after about 2 hours, unwrap them, and then we're gonna sauce them with the barbecue sauce. And again, you wanna get a nice smattering of barbecue sauce right over the top of the ribs. Get all the corners, pour it over nice and slowly, get your basting brush and brush up the ribs with the sauce nice and good, both just the top side with the meaty side. And then we're gonna put it back in the smoker, same temperature, 225 for that last hour, and that'll get that sauce to hit heat. So once you've let the ribs rest for about 30 minutes, let all that moisture go back into the ribs, you can take the foil off of the ribs and put them on your cutting board, as I'm doing here. And as you can see, the rib bones are sticking out of one side, which is great. You want to see that in the cooking process, especially for a good rack of ribs. You want to see those bones at the top, and it makes it much easier to cut them when it gets to that point in the process. So to cut them, I like to pick the rack up with one hand from the bone side and then take my knife and go right down the ribs and just straight through the meat and then cut singles off right down the ribs. I like this for a couple reasons. One, you can see the smoke ring on every single rib, and two, it's much easier for people to eat single ribs and get every single piece of meat off them, especially if you have a party and you don't know how many guests you're going to have or how many ribs people are going to eat. It's easier to have singles cut to serve than it is to make doubles or sometimes triples or larger like you see at some of the restaurants and stuff. So cut them in singles and then display them out and take some pictures. And then lastly, jump in, take a bite, and enjoy.